In line with your concern about the growing threat in terms of nuclear weapons, there are also maneuvers going on off the coast of Korea, and the words that we've heard from President Trump in the last few days that if China doesn't deal with North Korea, the U.S. will. Could you talk about his policies already, his developing policies toward Korea and toward China?
Well, it's kind of interesting to look at the record. The claim is, well, we've tried everything, nothing works, therefore we have to use force. Is it true that nothing's worked? I mean, there is a record, after all. And if you look at the record, it's interesting. 1994, Clinton established what was called the Framework Agreement with North Korea. And North Korea would terminate its efforts to develop nuclear weapons. The U.S. would reduce hostile acts. It more or less worked, and neither side lived up to it totally, but by 2000, North Korea had not proceeded with its nuclear weapons programs. George W. Bush came in and immediately launched an assault on North Korea, acts of evil, sanctions, and so on. North Korea turned to producing nuclear weapons. In 2005, there was an agreement between North Korea and the United States. Pretty sensible agreement. North Korea agreed to terminate its development of nuclear weapons. In return, it called for a non-aggression pact, so stop making hostile threats, relief from harsh sanctions, and provision of a system to provide North Korea with low-enriched uranium for medical and other purposes. That was the proposal. George Bush instantly tore it to shreds. Within days, the U.S. was imposing, trying to disrupt North Korean financial transactions with other countries through Macau and elsewhere. North Korea backed off, started building nuclear weapons again. Maybe you can say it's the worst regime in history, whatever you like, but they have been following a pretty rational tit-for-tat policy. And why are they developing nuclear weapons altogether? I mean, the economy's in bad shape. They could certainly use the resources. Everyone understands that it's a deterrent. And they have a proposal, actually. There's a proposal on the table. China and North Korea proposed that North Korea should terminate its further development of nuclear weapons. In return, the United States should stop carrying out threatening military maneuvers with South Korea right on its border. Not an unreasonable proposal. It's simply dismissed. Actually, Obama dismissed it too. There are possible steps that could be taken to alleviate, which could be an extremely serious crisis. I mean, if the U.S. did decide to use force against North Korea, one immediate reaction, according to the military sources available to us, is that Seoul, the city of Seoul, would simply be wiped out by mass North Korean artillery aimed at it, and who knows where it would go from there. But the opportunity to move towards a negotiated diplomatic settlement does not seem outlandish. I mean, this Chinese-North Korean proposal is certainly worth serious consideration, I would think. And it's worth bearing in mind that North Korea has some memories. They were practically destroyed by some of the most intensive bombing in history. The bombing that it's worth reading. Maybe you should read people the official Air Force history of the bombing of North Korea. It's shattering. I mean, they had flattened the country. There were no targets left. So therefore they decided, well, we'll attack the dams, which is a war crime, of course. And the description of the attack on the dams is, without the exact wording, I hate to paraphrase it, you really read they were simply exulting over in the official histories, Air Force Quarterly and others, about the how magnificent it'll be to see this massive flood of water coursing through North Korea, wiping out crops for Asians. The rice crops is their life. This will destroy them. It'll be magnificent. The North Koreans lived through that, and having nuclear-capable B-52s flying on their border is not a joke. But most significantly, there's a record of partial success in diplomatic initiatives, total failure with sanctions and harsh moves, and options that are on the table which could be pursued. Now, instead of concern about whether somebody talked to the Russians, this is the kind of thing that should be pursued very seriously. That's what the Democrats or anyone hoping for some form of peace and justice should be working for.
Which brings us to China. President Trump said, if China is not going to solve North Korea, we will. Are you concerned that with Trump at an all-time low for presidents when it comes to popularity, with suffering defeat after defeat, lashing out and trying to focus on a foreign enemy? But at the same time, you have China coming to the United States, this meeting that he's going to have with the Chinese leader, Xi, in Mar-a-Lago. Also very interesting, considering it's a golf course. He hates golf, and forbade Communist Party members to play golf. Is it more about Trump feeling he has more access to shut down press coverage or any information about who's meeting with him when it's in his private resort, but more importantly, what the agenda is there and what our relationship is with China?
Well, as you recall, one of the interesting incidents was a public discussion of significant security issues in the resort, with people sitting around drinking coffee and having drinks. Maybe they keep the press out, but they didn't seem to keep the guests out.
Well, not if you pay $200,000 a year and you're a member of Mar-a-Lago.
Then you pass through the filter.
And then you get to take photos, selfies with the man carrying the nuclear codes, the little football.
He's extremely unpredictable. But the relations with China are extremely serious issue. China's not going to back down on its fundamental demands concerning Taiwan, for example. And if Trump, a lot of what China's demanding, I think, is not acceptable. It's not internationally acceptable. But the reaction through use of force is just extraordinarily dangerous. I mean, you cannot play that game in international affairs. We are too close to destroying ourselves. You take a look at the record of through the nuclear age of accidental, sometimes kind of irrational actions. It's almost miraculous that we've survived. And anything that to get a good estimate of this, of the danger, take a look at the best monitor of the global security situation that we have as a simple measure, namely the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists' Doomsday Clock. This is set every year since the beginning of the nuclear age, 1947, by a group of serious specialists, scientists, political analysts, and others who try to give a measure of the danger that the human species faces. Midnight means we're finished. In 1947, the clock was set at 7 minutes to midnight. In 1953, right after the U.S. and Russia tested hydrogen bombs, thermonuclear weapons, it went to 2 minutes to midnight. That's the closest it's been to total disaster. Right now, as soon as Trump came in, it was moved to 2.5 minutes to midnight. both because of the nuclear threat, recognized to be serious, and the threat of environmental catastrophe, which was not considered in the earlier years, now is. Those are the overwhelmingly the most crucial issues that face us. Everything else fades into insignificance in comparison to them. Those are literally questions of survival. And 2.5 minutes to midnight means extraordinary danger. These should be the major focus of attention. And it's kind of astonishing to see the way they're ignored throughout the whole electoral campaign. Practically no mention of them. Every Republican candidate, every single one, either with regard to the climate, either denied what is happening or else said the moderates, like Jeb Bush, Kasich, said, well, maybe it's happening, but it doesn't matter. We shouldn't do anything about it.
Well, the U.S. just led the boycott at the UN of the nuclear ban talks.
Nuclear ban, it joined it with the other nuclear powers, unfortunately. There's also the question of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. There are now 3 nuclear powers which have refused to ratify it, China, the United States, and Israel. And if tests begin again, it's an extremely serious danger. As I mentioned, it was when the first tests were carried out that the doomsday clock went to 2 minutes to midnight. There's the problem of the New START treaty, a treaty that there has been inadequate but significant reduction in nuclear weapons since the end of the Cold War. The New START treaty is supposed to carry it forward. Russia and the United States have overwhelming mass of the nuclear weapons, and this would cut down the number, but also the more threatening ones would reduce it. Trump has indicated, I don't know, nobody knows what he means, but he's indicated that is what he calls a bad deal for the United States, suggesting maybe we should pull out of it, which would be a disaster. I mean, these are major issues, and the fact that they're barely being discussed is a shattering commentary on the level of contemporary civilization.
We're speaking with Noam Chomsky, world-renowned political dissident, linguist, and author, professor emeritus at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he's taught for more than 50 years. He has a new book out today. It's called Requiem for the American Dream, the 10 Principles of Concentration, Wealth, the 10 Principles of Concentration of Wealth and Power. We'll be back with him in a minute.